welcome to part 2, manual screen printing. We're going to talk about a few topics in this that we didn't discover in the previous video. First, we're going to talk about print, flash, print. Now, if you keep a sharp eye out on other people's shirts as they're walking around in the supermarket or at the park or something like that, you'll notice that sometimes white is printed very, very vivid, very bold on a shirt, and it's just a bright, solid white. And other times, it's very, very fuzzy or hairy. You can see the garment shining through the ink and it looks kind of vintage or washed. We're able to control that in this shop, so I'm going to talk about that. Now, the type of white that you can see the garment coming through, in this shop we call it a soft white because it's only being printed with one coat of ink, and that makes the print feel softer to whoever's wearing it, and it has the aesthetic of being more breathable, and people typically enjoy wearing it a little bit more. However, on some designs, people really, really like to have that bright white look, and so with that, we call it a bright white. And that means that we're getting 2 coats. Now, I want you to understand the difference between 2 coats of ink and 2 strokes. A stroke is the number of times that it takes me to clear out the ink in my screen. So if I do a flood stroke, and then I do a clear stroke, and then I do another clear stroke, several times over, I might use 3 strokes, but this is only 1 coat of ink. Pause for a second. So it might take me 1 stroke, or it might take me 2 or 3 strokes in order to properly clear out my ink, but I'm still going to have the exact same thickness of my ink. Here's the reason. When I coat the back of my screen with emulsion, it's building up a particular thickness of emulsion, and my ink is going to be exactly that same thickness, no matter how many times I go over it. You might envision it like I was printing a space in between these 2 cards. These are thick cardstock, so let's imagine for a second that I placed both of them next to each other like this with a small gap in between. Then I had some ink on my little scooper here, and I took it and I just smeared it right there into that gap. You could correctly guess that the ink is going to be exactly the same thickness as the 2 cards next to it. Let's say I took and did it again and smeared it again. Still the same thickness. I could go over it 1 time or 100 times. We're going to have the exact same thickness of ink. The only way I'll be able to make it thicker is if I flash this first coat by drying it underneath the dryer, and then I come back and I lay a coat with the exact same amount of thickness on top of it. That's how we get a bright white. It's called print, flash, print in this shop. So I print it once, however many strokes it takes. I flash it under my flash cure until it's dry, approximately 7 seconds. And then I bring it back to myself and I print again. So if you zoomed in right here, you could see that this print has some texture in it. You can see that it has a little bit of the shirt coming through. Now I'm going to print over it again. And instead of seeing any shirt coming through, now it's a bright, solid white print. A lot of customers like a bright, solid white print, and so that's why we do it. And we always call this 2 coats of ink. The next thing I want to talk about is flash and cure time. Flash is me drying the ink in between colors so that I can build up more depth, or if I'm printing multiple colors. Say I'm printing a white, black, and yellow design, I'll flash it in between each one. Flash time is approximately 5 to 7 seconds. It really depends on how hot it is in the shop and how hot your platens are. They will heat up and get quite hot as you move through a job, because that flash cure heats up to 600 degrees and it beats down on these and heats them up. So 5 to 7 seconds. Really though, you're just dialing in to whatever time will make the image dry. You don't ever flash for more than 10 seconds. It's never necessary, and you start running a risk of actually burning your garment instead of just flashing the ink. Cure time is different. So flash is when we just dry the ink, but if we take it off after it's been flashed and I stretch out the ink, you can look close here, you can see that it completely breaks apart, the ink does. That's because it's not actually cured, it's only been flashed. In order to cure the ink, I need to pull it off of my platen, and I need to either cure it underneath here for a set amount of time, or I need to put it through the large gas dryer. The most reliable way to manage our temperature is through the gas dryer. but we only fire it up if we've got a lot of work to do. If we're doing a small job, we'll just cure it with the flash cure here. So I'll usually fiddle around until I find a time that works. Typically on a thin garment like this, 8 seconds is enough time for me to cure this garment. So I'll slide it under there, and as it clicks into place, I'll set my time to whatever my predetermined time was. In this case, it was 8 seconds. It's critical that I set my time exactly at the same moment that it goes into place underneath the flash cure. If I put it into place underneath the flash cure, and then I wander over, and 2 seconds later, I set my time, well, I've just added 2 seconds to my curing time. And now I might be in danger of over curing the ink, or even worse, scorching the garment and making it unusable. So you dial it in until you're able to bring it out, cool it down, and then stretch the print without it breaking at all. Instead, the print stretches with the garment. Now, in order to print multiple colors, you have to make sure that your shirt is staying in place. The way we do that is with palette adhesive. We've talked about that in another video, but the basics are, you get the bottle, you squirt on a small amount, perhaps as much mustard or ketchup as you would put on a hot dog, and then you spread it around with a cleanup card. When you spread it around, you want to get good, even coverage and use a vertical corner. If you lay down the cleanup card, so that you're going to have the best results and you're going to have the best work rate by establishing a good rhythm. So I always do things in batches. In this case, I have 4 platens, so I'm going to do 4 of everything in a row. So I will load 4 shirts, standing in the exact same position. I'll load 4 shirts, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then I will print 4 shirts with my first coat of ink flashing after each coat. So while this one's underneath the heat, I will be down here printing this one. I raise it up, I do the same over here. So I load 4, and then I print 4, and then if I have to do a second coat, I'll do a second coat on all 4. And then afterwards, I will unload 4 and load 4 again. I don't put on 1, print it, flash it, bring it back, print it again. That wastes time and increases the probability that you're going to make some sort of a mistake. The last thing I want to mention on this video is about underbase and highlight white. So print flash print is an easy way on the manual press to get good bright white print. However, sometimes you're going to have multiple colors and some of them are not going to be able to stack up very easily. For example, a neon yellow, no matter how many coats you put of neon yellow on a black shirt, it's not going to come out very bright because it's not an opaque color. Something like that needs an underbase underneath it. So let's have a pretend scenario. We've got a customer who wants a black shirt printed with white and neon yellow. To them, all we're going to do is print some of it with white and some of it with neon yellow. But we know that that neon yellow is not going to go on the black very well. So instead, first we're going to create an underbase under everything using a good solid white ink. After that, we're going to print on the yellow and we'll flash it. Then we're going to come back a third time and we're going to print a highlight white. And the highlight white is essentially just printing a white on top of the underbase so that it locks everything together and makes everything really, really sharp. That's it.